Hello, this is Beer with Brian. My name is Brian, and I'm enjoying a beer. It's a Heineken. In the future, I might actually explain, you know, about things about the beer that I'm drinking, but I think everybody knows what a Heineken tastes like. So this isn't just me drinking a beer, it's also me talking. More specifically, it's me talking about life. And when I say life, I mean like all of it. See, life is a very curious thing because it really doesn't seem to have much purpose. I know that a lot of us try to replace this fact with certain things. That's why I call this a beer with Brian. Because a beer is what I like to call sublimation. And if you're not familiar with the term, sublimation is just trying to ignore the reality of the situation by creating distractions. And as we get older, sometimes basic distractions aren't good enough. So we seek out things like beer, or religion, drugs, or television, reality shows, materialism. There's a lot of stuff. But it's all sublimation. Because it really doesn't have any purpose. And for the most part, life doesn't have a lot of purpose. Now you might be asking yourself, oh, how did you come about this? Well, let's start off at the beginning. I was raised relatively religious. Okay, quite religious, actually. Typical Protestant white family growing up in the heartland. My grandfather actually started a church. And while a great deal of the people who went to the church were African Americans, I still think I probably had something more of a white religious upbringing, which is more conservative than an African American religious. My parents voted for Republicans, that's what I mean. Even though a lot of people in the church probably were voting Democratic. So I've had a very different perspective on life from the get-go. And it's always been quite difficult for me to come to terms with the fact that religion is, for the most part, a pile of bullshit. And I know that sounds offensive to people who have benefited from it to some degree. And I'm not saying that religion is not beneficial to people. I'm just saying that a lot of other things could be equally as beneficial without the whole fabricated story and moral, moral, high and mightiness. I don't know. I can't. I'm sorry. This is all very live. It's an interesting thing about a beer with Brian. So I'm not writing any of this. So, let's look at what were we talking about? Religion, yes. So, when I got into my 20s, I started to seriously doubt a lot of what I had learned growing up. And it wasn't just because I doubted religion. I also began to doubt history in general. And realized that the winners write history. And I know people say that a lot, but it's not just that the winners write history. It's that history is very, very subjective, based on a perspective that none of us have. And no one in history has ever had enough perspective to actually put history into the proper context. See, that's the amazing thing about humanity, is even though we believe that the world we're living in is real, the truth is that it's really just something our brain is telling us is real. Beginning a little bit too deep there, right? There's this idea, it's called objectivity. It's not attainable. There can be no objectivity. Every single person is subjective. And because we're all subjective, there will always be conflict between our stories. History is viewed in 7 billion different ways. And because most of what we base society on, and the rules and regulations of society, comes from what we believe happened in history, there are always going to be very, very severe conflicts. See, Marx wrote about the end of history, and he said that this sort of like communist utopia could create the end of history where there wouldn't be conflict anymore, but this is not true. I don't believe it is, at least. Let's just say that. Because there will always be fundamental inequalities between us, even if money is no longer the issue. I don't think Marx fully understood the idea that even the idea of gender, of men and women, and race, these are all inventions as well of society. So, then what are we? Well, I guess that's what I really want to talk about. I'm going to take a break here and dedicate this video and every video that comes after it to my lovely wife Molly, who, there's a picture of up there as a small child. Can you see that? See, kids. Children. So innocent, right? The reason I want to dedicate it to Molly is because we need each other. In the last couple weeks of my life, I've been learning more and more about mammals. And one interesting thing about mammals is that they've always been more concerned about protecting themselves and each other than they have been about actually going out and hunting. Now, of course, this isn't always the case. But the mammals that evolved into more intelligent mammals, mostly the primates, and the original mammals, the reason for the existence of the mammalian subfamily, is this decision to worry more about not getting eaten than about what your next meal is going to be. I can give you a very basic example. Reptiles have only 2 bones in their ears. Mammals have 3. Mammals are the only subgroup with 3. The reason we have 3 and they have 2 is because we decided to give up 1 bone that was used to increase the strength of the jaw and use that to increase our ability to hear. So we were more concerned physiologically about what was coming to get us than we were about what we would do with anything that we managed to catch. Now the reason I'm talking about evolution, and it's going to come up again and again and again, is because that is another big part of life. If you don't believe in evolution, then you are living in a complete and utter state of denial. Because evolution just does not only explain the evolution of species, it explains everything that has ever occurred in history, and everything that will occur. And when I say history, I mean the entire world. The universe evolves, you evolve throughout the course of your life, everything that you interact with evolves, and it all evolves in the exact same way. It makes life very predictable, which can become, which can make it sort of boring sometimes. evolution is what created us. And getting back to mammals, the reason we need each other is because we're not born with any preparation to take on the world whatsoever. We're pretty helpless. In fact, when we're born, we're probably the most helpless thing on the face of the planet. A human baby really has no chance for survival without other humans there to take care of it. Now, other mammals also need to be taken care of when they're born. The quadrupeds, not so much, because they still can walk around at least. There's never a period in a cat's life or a horse's life or a dog's life where it can't get around. It may not get around very well, but a baby just lays on its back. You gotta carry a baby. So from the get-go, we require a lot of assistance to become self-sufficient, to become self-sustaining, become self-sufficient, right? That sounds good. And there's good with that, and there's bad with it. The reason we need a lot of help is because we have very large brains. And our body, even when we're very young babies, uses the plurality of energy to function that brain. The bad part about it is we become reliant on the people around us, not only to take care of us, but to also construct our very being. I am the person that not only my mother and my father and my siblings made me to be, but also everything in society around me made me to be. And this is because I needed society, and I still do. We're still very much babies when it comes to getting the things that we at least believe are necessary to survive. There's not many people out there who produce their own food and make all their own fires, and even then they had to learn all that stuff from someone. And like I was saying, learning that stuff, you learn the things that help you survive, but then you also learn what society wants you to be. It's the best way I can put it. We all end up very much so like our parents. And it's very difficult to break away from the traditions that were instilled in you by your parents. And you believe that your parents' culture is your culture. This is because at the time when you are the most impressionable, you also are with people who are having the most effect on you. What I mean by that is my parents and everybody else in society doesn't have nearly the effect on me that they used to. And that's not because and I'm not saying that's just because I'm less impressionable. I'm just saying it's because I'm not exposed to that as much. I don't go to school. I don't live with my parents. I don't go to church. There's a lot of things that I did when I was growing up that I don't do anymore. And so even if I was very impressionable, I wouldn't be exposed to those things. Now, as I get older, I begin to realize that I'm not that I'm not believing everything that's being taught to me. And this is how much time I got left, just so you know. I imagine the ones of the future will be better than this. I'm getting used to it. We're actually going to use this to end. I never finished the dedication. Molly, that's my wife's name. I love you.